What does a tick and the Eiffel Tower both have in common? They're both parasites. Parasites.
They're both parasites?
They're both parasites.
Paris.
It took him a while. See, that's good when it takes you a while to get it.
This is the Distracted
Don't get
Joking
distracted.
Podcast.
Don't get distracted.
Welcome to the Distracted Driving Podcast. I'm Sean Genovese.
And I'm Rex Williams.
And this episode is a continuation of our conversation with our friend Stephanie Van Assche. And if you missed the last episode, Stephanie works for a startup in the Bay Area, not the Bay Area, the Puget Sound area.
Yeah.
There's water. I know there's water where she is.
It's a bay somewhere here around here.
The company is called Brinc, and they make drones for law enforcement. Make a variety of products for law enforcement. Stuff, yeah. All unmanned. They make unmanned phones.
Yeah.
Which leads one to ask, what's a manned phone look like? I don't know. Anyway.
Not like a woman phone. It's a little different. Sorry.
We left off the last episode. I asked Stephanie a question. We are including the question at the beginning of this episode, but essentially her career thus far has been in HR. She is an HR professional, and so I asked her what her most challenging HR role was. There's a lead-in right now, so we're going to get out of the way.
Let's do it.
Here's Stephanie. So that's interesting. So you were there for 2.5 years, then you went to PitchBook, and then Brinc plucked you to the brink. So you did HR, and you were at Boeing. Then the other three different industries, different service offerings, but you were still doing HR. Which one was the most challenging from an HR perspective?
I would say the job I have now is the most complicated, wild. It's like everything coming together.
Really?
And I've gone down this funnel, right? So at Boeing, back when I was there was something like 2,000 HR professionals that served the entire Boeing enterprise. That was one of 2,000. And then, went to TV News, and it was a smaller organization. I was one of maybe 30. And then at PitchBook, I was one of 10. And now I'm one of 4 people.
You definitely, it's certainly a progression in a certain direction there, isn't it?
Smaller pool. Yeah, no, she's the bigger fish.
Yeah, and so, I think I can safely say, I'm struggling in my job, and I think it's supposed to be like that. It's kind of designed to be like that. There's areas where I feel very confident, I've done this before. Here's the answer. Here's what we should do. Don't even think twice about it. That's the benefit of experience. And there's things where I'm I could have to Google this. Give me a minute, and I need to phone a friend. You can't know everything.
Well, okay. So let's talk about that for a minute, because first of all, you used the word struggle. You are struggling in your job. Are you struggling, or are you challenged?
Certainly challenged.
And then you said, well, you can't know everything, and you said it very nonchalantly. But that is something that takes some people a while to figure out. And I think so the higher you go, you tell me if this is your experience, the higher you go in an organization, the less you will know in terms of specific tactical, I don't know how to do that. I think that is by design. And the better leaders that I have seen and had the experience to work around, they understand that that's not their role. Their job as the CEO, the CFO, the head of whatever, is not to know everything. It's to know how to go solve problems. And you just described that too. Hold on a minute. I have to Google that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think in the larger established organizations, the top leader, let's call it the department leader, they need that humility, right? And they've hired people, specialists, to know the stuff or to run the projects, and there has to be trust there, and that humility. I think in what's maybe slightly different in my case is that I don't have that army below me. Like the buck stops with me at the end of the day. I am they, like I am five different theys at this point. They're like, who's in charge of benefits? And I'm like, hey, hand raise, and then, oh, who's in charge of I need to update my address? Hand raise, like I am a lot of theys right now.
Uh, how big's the company?
So,
We're just about 100 people.
That's a fun size. Sounds like fun.
and how long have they been around?
So the bulk of our workforce was really hired in the last 2 years. But our CEO, Blake Resnick, has been working on this product and this idea since 2017.
Okay. So 5-ish years as at least an idea. Maybe that's when you started the company as well. The majority of your growth in the last 2 years. I think that's very typical as well. So you're getting to a point where you're too large for the CEO to just be relied upon to make all the decisions and to know everything. But you're not a Boeing company yet. So I'm guessing, you're setting up some, you got to set up some processes. You got to start figuring out, okay, where do we need the rules? Where do we need the guidelines? Have I captured that about right?
Totally fair. It's a wild west in most disciplines in most areas, but they're becoming more structured, right? They're moving towards structure.
Mhm.
And so is there a tension there? Do you hear people talk about, oh, well, we're a startup. We don't want to lose that. We don't need more processes. We're going to lose our ability to just go make decisions.
Absolutely. I mean, there are people who, it's a personal kind of preference, I would say, right? Some people love like mass chaos, chaos or freedom, right? There's beauty in the chaos, right? You get to create, you build, you fail, you prototype, right? You lean over to the person next to you, you quickly iterate. There's a kind of a beautiful adrenaline and speed in that sort of cadence. But the more people you bring on, we need some kind of guidelines and rules and structure, or else you start to lose some of the efficacy. And people want to know,
Mhm.
like, what's the plan? Like, where are we going? When are we going to get there?
Mhm.
And so, there's some growing pains, right? People tend, I think, I don't know very much about startups. I've only been in it for 7 months. But what I've seen is that the further you go down the maturity line, people start to opt out. And those are the folks who love to go opt back in at that early stage. So it seems like everyone has kind of like a point where like, yeah, that's too much structure and bureaucracy for me. Like I'm gonna step out now.
Mm. Do you work closely with the CEO and are involved in
hmm
strategy building and everything?
Yeah,
That's awesome. Yeah. And
it's really
and
fun.
building like the culture of the company. Yeah.
Culture's a good one, right? Because so I'm thinking about like Boeing, right? At Boeing, CEO would say, "Hey, HR person over there, go fix culture or go make our culture board," right? And then he kind of says like, "Yeah, yeah, leaders have a part, but like I want you to push this thing." I think I'm finding at Brinc, everybody really does impact culture. It's the person who walks in with a cheesecake because their fiance made a cheesecake. Well, culture just went like, think about it was like way up. It was like, woohoo,
Yeah.
we got
Yeah.
cheesecake today, guys. Like it's great. Or maybe, someone's dog died and everyone's blue. All right, so it just like swings up and down, and it moves around so much in a small team.
Mm.
Um, and it can be influenced too, but I would say, if I walked up and said, "Hey everybody, here's our values, put them in action, go." They'd look at me like, "Are you crazy?" Like,
I
So
think
no
that's
values. You have no values.
yeah.
we actually do have
No,
values, so maybe
they
that's a bad
have
example, but I didn't
values.
create them.
But I think what you're
Okay,
saying
I'm
is
getting it.
that you can print the values on a piece of paper. You can hang them up around the office, but the values, those values that are printed there, are not what drives the culture. Culture is a product of the experiences that people are having, that then shapes their beliefs and influences the actions that they take. So if you've got somebody who, like you said, the dog died, and so my experience now is, well, I remember when my dog died, and these people came in and they brought me a cake and they made me feel better. Great. So now I had an experience. I've developed some beliefs about my coworkers, and that's going to now in turn drive the actions I take in the future. And boy, that is absolutely the magnification on that is a lot bigger when you have fewer people, because the impact that
Absolutely.
one person has
Yeah.
drives an experience for potentially everybody in the company.
I think you said that a lot better than I did. And exactly right, So we actually did have a coworker whose dog passed away this week, and we sent them a little, goodie basket to like raise their spirits and said, take the time you need. And while in the moment that might have just been, this is what Stephanie does as a person, it starts to get baked into maybe the next time that something like that happens, somebody else will remember, like, oh, I'm going to send them a cookie basket, and, they should take all the time they need to not rush back to the office. And maybe someone else passes that on, and then it becomes a part of culture, right? It's how we treat each other.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
How how many how many people in a formal management position do you have at Brinc?
Off the top of my head, something under 10, maybe.
Oh, really?
And so of those 10ish, are these people that were promoted into management after working there, after being employees, or did they hire in as a manager of something?
I would say most of them have been hired in, only because really the bulk of our employees are just reaching their 1 year anniversary. So hasn't been a lot of time to accrue and grow, but there have been a couple cases where we've seen a lot of effort and a lot of talent, and we're going to make it right and put them in a role that suits them.
Mm.
So the motivation for my question, this is a topic that, well, it's a topic that Rex and I have talked about on this and other shows. The reliance on management and leadership, but it's also the topic of a class I'm teaching. And I was talking to the class about how a lot of times, especially as organizations get larger, the people that end up in management positions are the people that were really good at something within the company. Oh, you're really good at welding, or you're really good at writing code, or you're really good at designing little balls that are telephones that you can throw into a hostage situation. And so then we go, oh, well, now we have a management need. This person's really good at doing X, so let's promote them to be the manager of this team.
Yeah.
And then we just sit back and hope for the best.
And that's a
And there's
different
this
function.
assumption. Yeah, exactly. There's an assumption that, well, you were good at this, so you'll be good at that. But we don't give you any training on that. So I'm curious. It sounds like that hasn't maybe happened yet at Brinc. You guys aren't quite that big, but you've been around the HR merry-go-round for a while. What are your thoughts on? Do you see companies do that well? Do they do it poorly? And how do we change the status quo there when it comes
Mm.
to promoting people into management and making sure they're successful?
I'll see if I can give you kind of two different answers. And the first one is from the perspective of somebody who wants those opportunities, right? So I think that, one of the common themes that I see across the rising millennial workforce is some of them are already in management, right? Maybe what they call the older millennials are already in management and director positions. Um, and some of the younger millennials are eagerly fighting and trying and how do I get there, right? They want to get there. So they really want that shot. And where I've seen teams take a shot and say, you're kind of junior, but maybe you're the technical expert. We'll put you in the position. It's hard because if you don't have management experience, the only way to get it is by having the failure moments, right? And by
Mm-hmm.
tripping and by, firing your first person and using the wrong script and saying things that are making your HR person cringe. You have to go through those moments of just like kind of being messy learning and get that experience to become that future leader that I want to go hire this experienced leader because they know what they're doing. Now, I truly think that organizations need both and they need them in the right places. So now I'm pivoting to more of like, how would I design it? I would love to, I think the ideal organization has spots for both. Like, I probably wouldn't hire a first time, a finance person into like a head of finance role. There's just too much risk there, right? I don't want someone who's like,
Mm-hmm.
can you tell me what a balance sheet looks like? I'm gonna like pull my hair out, right? So this is not a learning spot.
Yeah.
But maybe a first time manufacturing leader who shows a lot of promise and who's a great people person and knows the product, that's a great spot to say, like, let's turn your technical expertise and put it in a spot where you can coach others on what you know and all the stuff you know. And if
Mm-hmm.
you have a great HR person or either great next level management, like they'll provide the rest of it. Like here's how you fire somebody. Like here's how you coach someone when they're not performing. How do you recognize somebody? Like, hey, I noticed you never, pat your team on the back. Like maybe try that out next week. So I think that's where like the support system really comes in. You don't want a team of all newbies. And I think there's a lot of, lost, value in having a team of all experts too, right? Because they're just like, I'm just going to put my playbook in and fall asleep and run.
Mm. That is great. I love the messy learning. I think we need more of that and space to do that where, a mistake isn't gonna, cripple the company, but it'd be fine.
I like to say that there are very few things that can't be undone from a business perspective. So why
Hmm.
not let people go through the door? They can always walk backwards, like 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
Well, maybe 8 times out of 10, but yeah. So okay, you got to
Yeah.
give them space, and then I think what I heard you say there, you give them the space, but then you have something in place or somebody in place that's there to help them pick the door that they need to walk through, or after they've walked through the wrong door to whoa, grab them by the scruff of the neck and pull them back. Which I guess I don't know. Maybe we're designing the new Brinc promotion process here on the podcast today.
I like it.
You're welcome. Yeah. And there is more to come from Stephanie. If you just can't wait, though, I would like to remind you, and so I will, that you can find the Distracted Driving Podcast on our website at www.distracteddrivingpodcast.com. You can find us on the Instagram at Distracted Driving Podcast. You can find us on YouTube at Distracted Driving Podcast. What the heck else are we on?
Didn't you put us on Spotify and
Oh,
some of those
that's right.
others?
Yeah. And you can listen to the podcast episodes. So we
That's where
have a
all the kids
Facebook
are.
page. That's right. We
They're
have a
all on
Facebook
Spotify these
page,
days.
facebook.com, Distracted Driving Podcast. And then, we're on
iTunes.
Spotify, iTunes.
Yeah, big stuff. Big time. We're big time.
iHeartRadio, maybe. Is that a thing? Pretty much wherever
Yeah.
podcasts are given away for free.
Stitcher?
I think we
SoundCloud?
are on Stitcher. We should probably know these things before we
Yeah. No,
actually
we just tell
start
everybody
plugging
we're
them.
everywhere, and they're not going to find us.
So the point is, you can find us on a variety of platforms.
If you do a search.
We have been putting out some clips, some small clips on Instagram, which are nice because we try to make these episodes bite-sized,
Yeah.
but
Not too long.
really the
That's why we
episodes
cut
are
it up.
more like a light meal. The Instagram stories, though, the reels, those are bite-sized. You can just put those in your hand, carry them around with you, pop one in whenever you want.
And eat them. Okay.
How's
Gonna
that
eat the
for some
Insta Reels.
visualization?
Okay.
So
Sounds good.
check us out. Leave us we love to respond to comments, but when we respond to comments and there's no comments, then we're just talking to ourselves, and then people
done
think
that
we're
before.
crazy. And make no mistake, we are crazy, but we don't want people to think that. So, tell you what, we'll go research what platforms we're on, and we'll tell you at the beginning of the next episode. In the last part of our conversation with Stephanie, she's going to introduce us to a leadership development methodology, which she came up with. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next week.